Today, we are talking about the yellow-eyed penguin. This is the only species in its genus, and its common name is due to the yellow feathers around its eyes. It is also the winner of New Zealand's 2024 Bird of the Year competition, a title it has, in fact, held before, also being the winner in 2019 when it was the first seabird to ever win. As usual, a document with the sources for the images used, along with research papers I found useful, will be included in the description of this video. As far as birds go, penguins are certainly unusual. They are one of only two groups of birds where most members are flightless. The other group is the ratites in the infraclass Paleognathi, which includes ostriches and kiwi, among others. However, the two groups became flightless for very different reasons. Ratites are thought to have lost their ability to fly after arriving in Gondwana land. This is believed to have been a response to the aftermath of the Cretaceous extinction event, when most large predators went extinct. This is typically the reason most flightless birds become flightless. Flying costs a lot of energy, but it is a very useful skill for most birds, so the cost is worth it. The main benefit to being able to fly is that it lets them escape from terrestrial predators, like cats or rats. It does have some other advantages as well, such as giving access to perches or food that cannot be obtained without flying, but these are not usually considered useful enough to be worth the high cost associated with flight. This is why not only the ratites, but also other individual species of birds will often lose the ability to fly when they evolve on isolated islands without terrestrial predators. This was the case with the ratites, and is the case for many others, such as the kakapo, a flightless parrot, or the Campbell teal, a flightless duck. This video is not about the ratites or other flightless birds, however. It is about penguins, and they took a drastically different evolutionary route. They became hyper-specialized for the aquatic environment. The wings of their ancestors became more adapted to a system with swimming and diving, until they lost their ability to fly, and their wings became the flipper-like appendages seen on penguins today. Given this major difference in their reasons for being flightless, it is unsurprising that they are not closely related to ratites. Penguins are most closely related to other seabirds. They are in the clade Aequornithes, known as the core waterbirds. This group starts with the loons and gaviiforms. The next branch has penguins and sphenisciforms, alongside their closest relatives, the albatrosses and petrels and procellariiforms. Definitely two groups of birds that went in drastically different directions, given that albatrosses are some of the best long-distance flyers in the world. The remainder of the clade contains the storks and zirconiiforms, the boobies and cormorants and suliforms, and then finally the pelicans, herons and ibises and pelicaniforms. So back to the penguins. They are in the order Sphenisciforms, which only has one living family in it, Spheniscidae. With only one exception, penguins are only found in the southern hemisphere, and the exception is on the Galapagos Islands just north of the equator. They are found somewhere on all large landmasses in the southern hemisphere. While commonly associated with Antarctica, and perhaps South America and New Zealand, penguins can actually be found as far north as Australia and South Africa, making them present on all continents in the southern hemisphere. Penguins tend to form large colonies, from as few as 100 birds for some species to several 100,000 in others. This has many advantages, such as providing protection from predators or huddling together to conserve heat. Finally, the social and cooperative aspects of living in a colony also helps them to survive in the harsh environments where they live. Penguins have many adaptations that allow them to swim and cope with the cold. As we have already discussed, their wings have evolved into flippers, making them extremely agile in the water. The bone structure of these flippers is very similar to that seen in the wings of other birds, but the bones are shorter and thicker so they can exert greater force. This is important, as water is much denser than air, so they need this strength to fly through the water as easily as they do. Their feathers are also specialized for their aquatic lifestyle. Their plumage is thick compared to most birds, with some species having 30 to 40 feathers per square centimetre. This is about 3 to 4 times the feather density seen on most flying birds. However, for penguins this is crucial to help them cope with the freezing waters that they live in. Their feathers trap air underneath, which provides buoyancy when diving, but also provides insulation to prevent heat loss underwater. Penguins actually have 4 different types of feathers, and these work together to provide different benefits, making them extremely efficient at keeping penguins warm. Another potential source of heat loss would be the penguin's flippers, as these are much thinner than the rest of the bird and so have a high surface area to volume ratio, something that is bad for conserving heat. To get around this issue, they have an unusual system of arteries known as the humeral plexus. This allows cold blood to be quickly heated by warm blood and so limits the heat lost through their flippers. Another adaptation sometimes seen in aquatic animals is coloration known as countershading, and penguins are one of the best examples of it. Countershading means that their back is dark and their front is light. This is seen not only in penguins but also in fish like sharks. The reason for countershading is that it makes them harder to see when swimming. Their dark back is hard to see from above, helping to hide them from predators higher in the water column or from aerial predators above the water. Their light underside, on the other hand, is hard to see from below them in the water as it doesn't stand out against the light coming from the surface. Some of their adaptations are not just due to being aquatic, but also specifically for the marine environment. One of the biggest issues with this is dealing with the high concentration of salt. Penguins deal with this as their supraorbital gland filters excess salt from their bloodstream. This salt is then excreted from their nostrils. Penguins may be extremely well adapted to aquatic environments, but they have much less mobility on land. Penguins are well known for waddling. This may be a slow way to walk, but it is actually extremely energy efficient. Without waddling, they would struggle to walk at all since their legs are so short, requiring them to walk with fast, small steps, taking a lot of energy. Waddling, however, allows them to pivot and sway to walk forwards, letting physics do the work instead of their muscles. If they do need to move quickly, they have 2 ways to do this. The simple one is to jump or hop instead of trying to walk. They often use this to quickly cross uneven or rocky ground. The more fun option is known as tobogganing. This is exactly what it sounds like, where the penguins slide across snow on their belly. They can use their feet to steer themselves and control their slide. While it can only work in snowy environments, it does let them move very quickly. Spheniscidae may be the only family of penguins, but it has several different genera. The first is perhaps the most iconic penguins. These are the great penguins, Adaptations. There are only 2 species of these, the king and emperor penguins. These are the largest penguins alive today, and are known for the yellow or orange coloration on their throat and cheeks. Next are the brush-tailed penguins, Aequornithes. This has 3 species, and their plumage is just black and white, with no other noticeable colours. They are all found around Antarctica and the Southern Ocean, although a couple of them can be found as far north as Argentina. There are currently 2 species of little penguins, Megadyptes. They have a lot of different common names, including the blue or little blue penguin, as they are the only living penguins without a black back. Instead, they are a dark greyish blue colour. Their common names also reflect their status as the smallest living penguin, which is also seen in another name they go by, as the fairy penguins. Little penguins are most closely related to the banded penguins in Spheniscidae. There are 4 species of banded penguin, and these are recognisable as the difference between their black and white areas are less clearly defined, giving them a more motley or scruffy appearance. 3 of the species are found around South America, including the one in the Galapagos Islands, and the 4th one is found around South Africa. Next will be the focus of this video, the yellow-eyed penguin in Megadyptes. There is only 1 surviving species in this genus. The yellow-eyed and little penguins used to be considered closely related, probably because they are some of the most common penguins on the New Zealand mainland. However, genetic analysis has proved that this is not the case. The final genus is the largest, with the crested penguins in Megadyptes. There are 7 species of crested penguin, and they are easily distinguished from the other genera by the large yellow eyebrow-like crests all of the species have. They are mostly found on the subantarctic islands, although some species can be found on the New Zealand mainland. So, let us return to the yellow-eyed penguin, Megadyptes antipodes, or hoiho in Māori. The generic name, Megadyptes, just means large diver, while the species name of antipodes is due to it being found on the Antipodes Islands. Yellow-eyed penguins are not only found there, however. They are also found on various other subantarctic islands, including the Auckland and Campbell Islands. They are also found on mainland New Zealand, around Stewart Island and along the southeast coast of the South Island. Despite this fairly large area, the different yellow-eyed penguin populations are believed to be quite separate, with few or no individuals from the mainland populations going to the subantarctic islands, or vice versa. It used to be believed that yellow-eyed penguins were common on the New Zealand mainland before humans settled there. However, genetic analysis has shown that this is much more complicated than was previously believed. Genetics prove that the yellow-eyed penguins found on New Zealand today only arrived in the last 200 years, after Polynesians arrived and not long before the Europeans started settling there. In theory, this makes little sense, as yellow-eyed penguin fossils older than that have been found in New Zealand. It turns out that the penguins we know today used to be one of 3 subspecies. So, the subspecies that is now on the mainland only arrived in the last couple of centuries. Before that, New Zealand was inhabited by a different subspecies of yellow-eyed penguin. Dubbed the Waitaha penguin, it was found all around New Zealand, including on the North Island. It is believed to have gone extinct about 500 or 600 years ago, in the 1500s. Originally classified as its own species, the Waitaha penguin was reclassified as a subspecies of the yellow-eyed penguin very recently, in 2022. The time where it disappears means that it is likely that they were hunted to extinction, as the Polynesians first arrived in New Zealand about 200 to 300 years earlier. It is therefore believed that the subspecies we know today expanded their range to take over the ecological niche that was once occupied by the Waitaha penguin. It is therefore believed that the subspecies we know today expanded their range to take over the ecological niche that was once occupied by the Waitaha penguin. The third subspecies is known as Richdale's penguin. They were a dwarf form of the yellow-eyed penguin and were only found on the Chatham Islands. They were hunted to extinction even earlier than the Waitaha penguin, going extinct in the 1400s. By now you have already seen several photos of yellow-eyed penguins, so you probably have a good idea of their appearance. Their most striking feature is the crown around their head, which connect their eyes with a band of yellow feathers. The yellow coloration is mostly restricted to their head, with the rest of their body being the classic black and white penguin coloration. The other thing that stands out about them is their pinkish feet and bill. They are the largest penguin to nest on the mainland of New Zealand, standing up to 79 centimetres or 31 inches tall and weighing up to 8.5 kilograms or 18 pounds. Their weight will vary throughout the year, as all penguins go through a molting season. This is where they molt off their old feathers and grow new ones. This is a necessary but uncomfortable time for a penguin, as they need new feathers to ensure that they remain waterproof and insulated against the cold. However, molting takes several weeks, and during this time the penguins cannot swim. This makes them extremely vulnerable to predators, but importantly also means that they cannot enter the sea to fish. So molting is essentially a time of enforced fasting. This means that in the lead up to molting, penguins will try to gain weight so that they can survive without starving to death. Yellow-eyed penguins feed primarily on fish. This makes up about 90% of their diet, with the remainder being crustaceans like krill and cephalopods like squid. There has even been some confusion about their diet, as it appeared like the penguins would also sometimes target jellyfish. However, more recently it has been discovered that the penguins were feeding on the juvenile fish that were associated with jellyfish, and not the jellyfish themselves. When nesting, the penguins undertake 2 different kinds of fishing trips. During the day, they will leave in the morning and return in the late afternoon. These can be far-ranging, where the penguins will swim up to 25 kilometers from their nesting site. In the evenings, they can undertake much shorter fishing trips, where they only take 3 or 4 hours and don't go further than 7 kilometers. Outside of breeding season, the penguins are remarkably loyal to their breeding areas for an aquatic animal, rarely travelling 50 kilometers from it. Young disperse much further when leaving their nest, however, and are often found outside of their established range. This can be as far north as the North Island of New Zealand, although there are no breeding colonies of penguins there. Yellow-eyed penguins are one of the few species that do not form large colonies. There has been debate over whether they should be referred to as colonies at all, as the penguins typically do not nest within sight of each other. They do, however, frequently fish with other yellow-eyed penguins and return to the beach together in small groups of 4 to 6 or occasionally more. They will then separate from each other to return to their individual nests. This setup means that nesting areas for yellow-eyed penguins are usually referred to as penguin habitat instead of a penguin colony, as it is certainly not a traditional penguin colony. The penguins select their nesting site in August and then lay 2 eggs in September. The parents take turns incubating the eggs, which hatch after 39 to 51 days. For 6 weeks after hatching, the chick is guarded by one parent while the other goes out fishing. The one that was fishing then returns to the nest to feed the chick and to relieve their partner of guard duty, allowing them to go out and get their own food. After 6 weeks, the chick requires more food, so both parents leave it unattended to go fishing. Chicks fledge during February, at which point they leave the nest and are fully independent. There is some debate about exactly when they become sexually mature, with estimates varying from 2 to 5 years old. Yellow-eyed penguins are serially monogamous. This means that they only have one partner during a breeding season and typically return to them for the next breeding season. However, they do not usually remain with the same partner for their entire lifetime. Yellow-eyed penguins are considered endangered by the IUCN. It was most recently assessed in 2020, so fairly recently, and the news is not good. It is considered one of the rarest penguins in the world, possibly only outdone by the Galapagos penguin. Yellow-eyed penguins have an estimated population of 2,000 to 3,000 birds, 40% of which are the ones found on the mainland of New Zealand, with the rest scattered among the subantarctic islands. Unfortunately, its population has decreased by about 20 to 30% in the last 15 years, and this trend doesn't show any sign of slowing down. Yellow-eyed penguins face many threats. Human disturbance is, of course, a large one for the mainland population. People naturally want to see penguins, and yellow-eyed penguins have several publicly available nesting sites. However, the penguins are extremely sensitive to humans and will often delay their return to the nest if they see humans nearby. In extreme cases, they can even abandon their nest completely. To help with this, there are places where the public can use bird hides to see the penguins without disturbing them, and organised tours can still let people enter restricted areas to see them, while ensuring that the penguins are not negatively impacted by this. It is good advice for any species of penguin, but especially for one as rare as the yellow-eyed, it is critical that people keep their distance and let them nest undisturbed. Humans are not the only issues faced by them. Invasive predators are always an issue in New Zealand. Stoats and cats target their chicks and have been known to wipe out entire breeding colonies. Dogs can easily kill adults, so dog owners near areas where the penguins nest are advised to keep their dogs away at all costs. The quality of their habitat has also been reduced. They require coastal forests and shrubland to nest in, but many of these types of habitat were destroyed by the early settlers to make room for housing or farmland. New Zealand's Department of Conservation and other interested groups have been working to create better habitat for them, including protecting areas that they frequent, controlling invasive predators, and installing nesting boxes. However, this work is ongoing, and as the numbers continue to decrease, it suggests that this is not the only factor causing their decline. Those are the main dangers on land, but the sea has its own threats. Penguins getting caught in commercial fishing nets is an issue, but the main threat actually seems to be the warming oceans. While this does not affect the penguins directly, it does affect their prey. Yellow-eyed penguins have historically favoured eating red cod, but the population of red cod has crashed along the New Zealand coast due to a combination of warmer waters and overfishing. This has forced the penguins to start eating a lot more blue cod, which are not as nutritious for them. The poorer quality food can lead to starvation among both chicks and adults. Adults sometimes cannot provide enough food for their chicks, leading to the chicks starving to death. While the adults can provide for themselves most of the year, the lower quality food is particularly noticeable when they are molting. Because molting requires the penguins to undergo fasting, they need high enough fat reserves to survive. As a result, the poor quality food means that the adults can starve to death when molting. As if all of these issues are not bad enough, a previously unknown disease appeared in 2004 to kill 60% of the chicks that year on the Otago Peninsula in New Zealand. It was later determined that the disease was caused by bacteria related to the one that causes diphtheria in humans. While this continues to be a problem, human intervention can drastically reduce its impacts. In 2022, 88% of the penguin chicks that were treated for this disease managed to survive. It could still be a major problem for any yellow-eyed penguin populations, not as closely monitored as those on mainland New Zealand are, but it is unknown if the bacteria has spread to the subantarctic populations. This might actually be a situation where the lack of gene flow between the different populations is an advantage. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Yellow-eyed penguins are fascinating birds, but are unfortunately under many threats in the modern world. As one of the rarest penguins left in the world, they have become a symbol for conservation in New Zealand, and are even featured on New Zealand's $5 note. Thank you for listening, and feel free to suggest another group of animals you want to see me cover in the comments.